actually was thinking, coming here, it's a good opportunity. I want to thank everybody for making this possible, because it made me think, actually, why do I do what I do, and why do we all do what we do? And then, of course, I went back to the beginnings of the career, when we were taught in the early 90s, just when pluralism and the so-called democracy started taking root in our countries, in Kosovo and the wider region. We were taught by people from the West, friends of Tim and the likes, that there are 5 questions one needs to ask and find answers to before he can publish a report in a newspaper or TV or radio. We all know the 5 famous W's. And it's, you know, who, what, when, where. And the last one, which was sticking to my mind when I came here, is why? Why do we do what we do? Why am I here talking to you? Why did you come here to listen to me? And it's the most difficult one to answer, because the first one, who? It's me, Agron Bajrami. I'm editor of Coaditore, which is the answer to the second question, what am I? And the answer to the third question, that I'm working for Coaditore, which is where? When? It's since 1994. I'm in this business, which makes it 27? No, how many years, Tim? 23. It was 27 when I started. This is what I wanted to say. So, and why is the most important for me, also because it tells a much deeper story about Coaditore newspaper and Kosovo at the 90s and the region, and the fact that there was once an idea that you could change the world by being a journalist. Now, it seems to be that there is an idea that you can mess the world by being a so-called journalist. But anyway, let's go back to that. In 1994, as a 27-year-old young person who always dreamed of being a comic book writer, or maybe even a rock star, a singer, decided to write an article, which was the first published article. And it was about a famous rock band, which is still playing, by the way, AC/DC. So when I started very late, 27 years old, you know, I already finished my faculty. I never thought of being a journalist, let alone, I mean, I didn't even read newspapers at the time. There were no daily newspapers which were not controlled by a political party. It was unheard of to have in former Yugoslavia a newspaper which is not controlled by a political party. The one and only political party that existed. But that's the time when we were also in much deeper isolation than we are today, for example. Not only that we needed to have visas to travel abroad, like we still do, unfortunately, but we also needed to travel for 6 or 7 or 8 hours to go to Belgrade in order to apply for a visa. So it was a much more difficult environment. We felt isolated. We felt worthless because there was no jobs for young generation. There was no perspective. Most of my friends with whom I went to school are today living in London because they left early, because they felt there is nothing that you could do in the country which we call Kosovo. And then came Coaditore, which for me was an escape. And this is the beginning of the answer to the why question. The escape from the reality in which you couldn't see yourself prospering or actually delivering anything. But a very strange escape. By becoming somebody who actually talks about that reality, who actually exposes that reality, who tries to deliver the message as wide and as deep as possible about what that reality is doing to people. So, but it helped make us, not only me, but the group of people who were there at the beginning, and Adriatic just mentioned, he was also there, feel that we are not worthless anymore, that we actually do something which is worthwhile, and it's not about the pay that you get, because we didn't get paid much at the time. It's about the feeling that you actually can change the world. Looking today, I'm happy to say, and I suppose I really wish that the reason for me being here is because some other people also think that we did contribute to a certain degree of change in Kosovo. Looking back, I think that a newspaper like Coauditor, and there were others in the region, which started in a similar fashion at the more or less same time, be it in Serbia or Albania or Montenegro or Bosnia or so on. Unfortunately, many of them have not been printing anymore, but the fact of the matter remains that in the 90s, the democracy that we talk about today in our countries did not exist as something which was seen natural for our societies, and it was people like us working in newspapers, not for the money, not for the fame, by actually staying away from our families, by risking our health and to be beaten by the police and so on, which actually even happened to me and so many others. We helped create a society in which freedom of thought and the speech and freedom to write is now taken as granted. I think that we are, I mean, here we speak about the fact that we are being pressed. But in all our countries, I don't think that you could find a case in which government can shut the mouth of somebody who actually wants to talk and say whatever he wishes to say. So I think this is the second part of the answer to the question why. Why do we do what we do? And this, I think, is important for me to remind myself, as well as my colleagues back in the newspaper, but also colleagues here from the whole of the region, because we are discussing about difficulties that we have in this modern world, about technological obstacles that are being posed to us, about political pressure coming from different parties and governments, about fake news and bad journalism and non-ethical one. And I think that we need to remind ourselves that we have gone through and we have made it in much more difficult time. That's why I would not like to see despair and angry talk as we usually see in these sort of conferences. Today, I get asked many times by friends and family, people who I would guess care for me more than just like ordinary guy in the street, and they would say discreetly, well, don't you think it's time to give up? I mean, how long do you think you can actually do this? Why would you need to get into confrontation with people in power, with people who are dangerous also, and so on? And then again the question appears, why would you want to continue doing this? And I think it's important for us to think, all of us, that there is a great bigger reason why we do this, and that should be about ethics, that should be about participation in the society, that should be about doing this much more than just exposing somebody's wrongdoing. It's about contributing our families and our friends and our society as a whole to go to the next level of development and become truly democratic. I didn't want to talk about the history of the newspaper and how we suffered to make it work and how we still suffer today. I think there is a lot of talk about suffering to produce a good medium and what professionals have as obstacles. I think for me it was important, as I said, to remind myself and maybe somebody from you that it is really, really utmostly important to think of why do we do what we do. And if the answer is simply a pay, a working place, I think then we could conclude we are in the wrong business. But I simply hope that all of us have much more in mind when we ask this question. Thank you.